know the path
Yeah.
to greatness is not a linear one. I understand that. And so I'm able to go on these different journeys in these different areas and different avenues and understand that when it all goes wrong, when it all hits the fan, I knew that was coming, because I knew the path to where I'm trying to go was never going to be straight, because I've made it to the top of something before.
Yeah.
And so it's taught me how to embrace these different paths and along these different journeys, because I know if I want to make it to the end, it's going to look like this. It's no different because it's basketball, whatever it is that I want to do. If I want to make it to the end, it's going to look more like a drastic stock market day.
Podcast family. I've got an incredible conversation today. And as you know, it's been almost 3 years since I have done a conversation on Zoom. And Chrissy last year said, hey, what would it take for you to do a Zoom episode again? And I said, well, you got to put somebody in front of me that I love, respect, admire, and I want to get to know even better. And so she found him. Now I'm going to glaze him right now. I'm going to glaze him like a Krispy Kreme donut. This guy, seriously, in my 8 years in Michigan, raising my children here, he is probably one of the most dominant athletes that it doesn't matter where I go, I hear about. He was ranked a top 50 player in ESPN's 150 rankings coming out of Saginaw High School. He played power forward at MSU from 08 to 12. He beat my man Special K, who is a dear friend of mine that I sit next to at every Pistons game, for the all-time rebound leader by 4 rebounds. And then my boy Paul Davis, who works right next to me in this hall, he beat him by a little bit under 200 rebounds to be the leader for Michigan State in rebounding. Drafted number 35 in the 2012 draft, 4-time NBA champion, 4-time NBA All-Star, 2017 NBA Defensive Player of the Year, Olympic gold medalist, Tokyo 2021, Draymond Green. What else do you have to prove on the court?
I won more championships. That's about it.
Well, I was
championships.
Brother, I was looking at this other stat line, and it talked about 17 ejections, 163 technical fouls. And I was like, that man locks people up. That's good defense, right?
That comes with winning championships. If I need to get more ejections to win another championship, give me 17 more ejections.
Yeah. Well, I love it. And look, everybody knows that that side of you as an absolute athletic specimen in the game of basketball. Well, and I do love the episode you did with Fred Warner where you said, no, you wouldn't play football. That
No
was
chance.
that,
I have no interest.
that was
Zero.
good. I want to set the table for today, though. You know, the reason I asked you on, and I'm so thankful to you and Travis for helping me make this happen with you, but I wanted to have a conversation with you about some of the even bigger visions that I think you've had for your life. And you've communicated a lot of these sort of like dream space thought ideas that you've had that you've pursued aggressively while you're playing the game of basketball. And so I really want to talk about the decisions you're making while you're in the locker room and on the court still, the way you're setting yourself up for success by auditing the circle of people, things you've learned from some of the greatest mentors and advocates in your life, and then how you make decisions to invest. Because right now we're really trying to pour into our student athletes who are receiving NIL money, which is a new thing. And, you know, there's a lot of mistakes happening today. But then when they go from college to the league, they also need to make sure that they're making really smart decisions while they're there to get ready for the next chapter. So if you're good with it, that's where we're going to get dialed in on.
I think that is extremely important. I think so many guys, including myself at times, have struggled with that. You know, so I think, just for a lot of young athletes, but not even just young athletes, like a lot of young people, because they apply to everyone. I think as athletes, our lives get sped up, and the fact that nowadays 18 years old, a kid can be making millions of dollars. As an athlete, our lives are sped up in the sense that we make the most money in our younger age, whereas opposed to
Hmm.
yourself, you work, you work, you work, you get better, you grow, and then the money starts to come
Hmm.
in as you grow. You have these time to make these mistakes. For us, the mistakes can be costly because you may never have an earning potential like that again. And so I think it's very
Hmm.
important for young athletes to hear this. But like I said, not only young athletes, just young people in general.
Can you share with our listeners a little bit about in your early years in the league, right? There was no NIL money when you came out of Michigan State in 12, but you get drafted number 35. Money starts coming in that you've not seen before. Can you share with our listeners a little bit about how you began to decide who would be at your table?
Oh well, I think for me, I started to with people that I trust, that you see in the position, and you ask them like, who do you deal with for this? Who's in your circle for that, and you start to, um, for me, reach out to that, guys or females or whoever it is for you that you're comfortable with. You see them having the success that you want to have, and
Mm,
you find out who their team is, and you kind of start trying to pluck from their team, because that there is some level of trust there due to how you've seen them operate, with your confidant that it could be. For me, I think my first person that I ever reached out to was someone who Coach Izzo, dealt
oh,
with on an investing side. And like I say, you just really
mhm.
for me, tried to look at people that I knew were having financial success, having success in life, and see how they built their team up.
Yeah, I love that you said that. As you know, I've been working in and around the NFL for about 15 years now, and I've heard a number of guys in the league that we've done work with talk about how success leaves clues,
Mhm.
and it's like, hey, find that person that's successful that you actually respect and admire, and see what they've built, and like you said, kind of try to pluck or tap into
Mhm.
that circle that they already have to see if they can also be a resource to you. Who else besides Coach Isso really stands out to you from your earlier years where you said, "Hey, that's somebody that I admire, and I would say, boy, if they trust them, then I trust them."
I think in my earlier years, I was just really thirsty for knowledge, like
Mm,
thirsty for, um, I had the opportunity to build a close relationship with Peter Guber, who's the owner majority owner of the Golden State Warriors, and building a relationship with him, seeing how, his setup is. You have teammates in the locker room, Andrew Bogut, and just different guys, David Lee, different guys that you've watched have that success, doing the right things. Being out here in Silicon Valley, having friends like Shamath Palihapitiya, David Sachs,
mm,
Bill Lee, Bill
yeah,
Gurley. Like I said, you've seen these people dominate in their industries and do so well when it comes to finances and
yes.
trying to, just really pluck some energy. Excuse me, not energy. Pluck some ideas from those guys. Pluck some knowledge from those guys. And I think for me, like I said, that was always the way that I wanted to get myself rolling. Is just watching other people that's had success, not feeling the need to recreate the blueprint. Like if they're laying a successful blueprint, follow the blueprint. Don't feel the need to always go reinvent the wheel.
Can you think of a time? Can you think of a time in recent years where you've had to exit somebody from your intimate table?
Often,
Yeah, can you
absolutely.
give I mean, you don't have to use names. I mean, you could do whatever you want. You're Draymond Green, but can you share an example to our listeners of like, hey, this was the situation. This is what I saw that told me it was a red flag, and it was, hey, pull the ripcord on that person.
Oh well, I've had a situation where you feel like you can where you feel like you can trust someone. They're thinking that they cross their T's and dot their I's. By the time the information make it to you, and I was much younger, the information make it to you. you think all the work has been done, right? Like it's gotten to me at this point now. It's in a place where I can, identify what it is right here, get it done, and go on. And because you didn't do all the work yourself, you don't know if the dots are, the
Mm,
I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And so then you find out on the back end when everything goes wrong, like, man, I thought this was done.
yes.
I thought that was X, Y, and Z, and it wasn't that way, and all of a sudden you realize, like, I've been placing trust into these people that
Mhm,
don't quite deserve the trust, because
mhm,
even if it's not dishonesty, I think so many times you hear the story of dishonesty of where, people aren't being honest about the situation, hiding things, swiping here, swiping there. It's not always dishonest. Sometimes it's just lack of attention. Sometimes it's lack of knowledge, and so
mhm,
I think being able to understand all of those different things and knowing that you're not just looking for some someone that stealing,
mhm,
to put it in layman's terms. Like,
mhm.
I'm not just looking to see if this person is stealing. I actually have to look and pay attention and make sure that these people are doing a great job and cross my I's and dot my I's and cross my T's.
Mhm. Yeah, I like the example you gave there because I think the well, I don't think I know the media has sensationalized the idea that it's always this like criminal act
Hmm.
and sloppiness, lack of competency, lack of awareness, lack of having all the right tools and resources around you is not a criminal act. It's literally we hired the wrong person and we didn't fully vet them, right? And I've seen
Absolutely.
so especially in financial services, you can imagine, I've seen more mistakes made by financial planners, financial advisors, just from that kind of like fake it till you make it nonsense.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Absolutely.
they go buy a fancy suit, a car they can't afford, a watch they shouldn't own, and all of a sudden they're saying, "Oh, I work with NBA players." And I
Hmm.
always kind of chuckle when people come around me in the state of Michigan, and I'm kind of polarizing to some extent in the business that I'm in. So I'm obsessed about what we do in financial stewardship. So people want to come up and tell me how much they do and how big they are and how many clients they've worked with, and I'm always like, oh, you work with surgeons? How many? Like, quantify it. Help me understand, right? Hey,
And the
you've done
reality is, in most times, it's probably a lie. Like, if you feel the need to come boast what it is that you're doing to me, if you were actually doing those things, I'd probably already know. But you want to come, you're going to come throw it in my face as if
yeah,
like, oh, I'm doing this as if we're in competition. It's like, yes,
yes.
of course, in business, there's always going to be some competition, but I'm not in the type of competition to come feel the need to come throw it in your face of what I'm doing. My competition and the competition that I was in will show at the end of the road if I do what I'm setting out to do. Not necessarily at the beginning of the road where, hey, I'm just meeting you and you feel the need to come lay out your resume for you, as if
Yes.
that's going to make me think any differently than you, or any differently about you that I thought when I talked to you 5 minutes ago. When I first walked up to you 5 minutes ago, just because you just laid out this extravagant resume, if you will, that didn't change anything. It actually possibly made me less turned on to you.
I yeah, anyway, yes, we wrapped that one up really well. Hey, in the world of NIL today, so we have a decent, listening audience that are these high performing student athletes, right? Especially in some of the biggest schools in Michigan and the Midwest. What's probably like 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you'd give them today to say, hey, like when it comes to auditing your circle, outside of looking at who successful people have around them, here's 1 or 2 other things to think about as you're beginning to come into money that you've never seen before in your life.
No should be your best friend.
Oh,
Most deals that you get access to will fail. Um, so more often than not, say no. Most importantly, to people, to ideas, to opportunities. I think no has to be your best friend. And then I would say, one thing that happens a lot when you come into money, it's like everyone feels the need to change their lifestyle at the beginning, and so
Mhm,
you come into money, it's like, oh man, I can get a better house now, I can get this thing now, I can
mm,
do that thing now. And you set yourself up better if you can live that same lifestyle for at least an extent, a small period of time, but
mhm.
preferably an extended period of time. You set yourself up better in the future by doing that. And so I think those two things, which both entails a little bit of the same word, no. But I just think, when you're first coming into it, like, try to figure it out first, but try to figure it out with your money in your pocket. We all want to run and figure it out, dishing out the dollars. Like, try to figure it out with the money in your pocket first.
I like that. So no should be your best friend. Not your words, but the way I heard it was, hey, you should maybe think about waiting to upgrade your quality of life and your lifestyle and keep the money in your
1000%.
pocket as you learn.
The earlier you can get the money into the bank, and when I say bank, I mean obviously bank, safe
Yeah.
investments.
Yeah.
I'm going to use bank just to not bore everyone, but the sooner you can get the money into your possession and hold on to it, the better the money works for you.
Can you before we kind of pivot to kind of locker room advice, more locker room advice to young athletes in the leagues and in college, can you think of one thing that you're really proud of yourself for waiting and delaying for the gratification?
I bought my first home um, in 2020.
What?
Um,
8 years in the league.
yeah, and
Say more.
one of the best decisions I could ever make, and I still think it was too soon. Um,
What?
because there's so much that goes into the upkeep of a home
Oh,
that
yeah,
when before you're a homeowner, you don't know.
yeah,
Like, there's so much more that goes into it. And so I think for me, um, that's one of the most things I'm most proud of, because growing up in Saginaw, Michigan, um, the home that we own repossessed by the bank, foreclosed by the bank. I always wanted to own a home. And when I got to the NBA,
mhm,
my financial team, I'm like, I want to buy a house. I want to buy a house. Like, that's not really a good idea. I'm like, I really want to buy a house. Like, I just want a place to call home, like
yeah,
that's my own. Like, this really, and I didn't understand it. I can honestly say I just didn't understand. Like, you hear the American dream. You find a great job, you save
that's
your
right.
money,
Yes,
and you buy a home. And I don't really believe that American dream leads to financial success. And so, for me personally, I'd say that was one of the things that I was happy I waited on. Like I said, I bought it, um, and we bought our first home in August of 2020. I wish it was August of 2025. And I love our home. We love our home. It's great, but there's a lot of things that come up that you end up dishing money out for that you
yeah,
just didn't know were going to come up. You can't forecast it. Things break left and right. You leave the water on too long. All of a sudden, like, if you're in the state of Michigan, you leave the water off too long, the pipes freeze, and now you got, like, there's just so many things that go on that
uh,
no one explains to you before you buy a home. And so I think and in turn, then what it ends up doing is I think it ends up putting you in a deeper financial hole at times if you're not prepared for what lies ahead. And so I think that's one of the things that I'm still to this day really happy that I waited on. And like I said, if I'm honest, I wish I would have waited a little longer. But I have 4 kids, I have a wife. Gets a
yeah.
little more challenging to wait a little longer.
Well, and it goes back to, I mean, it literally boomerangs, but right back to one of your previous comments, which is, basically like be patient and learn while keeping the money in your pocket. And you use the analogy of the bank, whatever the institution is, whatever the platform is that helps your money
Mhm.
grow and outperform inflation. The bottom line is that if you just accumulate enough of it consistently for a long enough period of time, eventually you can make those decisions without feeling the same sort of like risk or anxiety or pressure that, can I sustain that? So that comment really resonates, especially for one of four boys who grew up with very modest resources in a 700 square foot house outside of Chicago. I too
Mhm.
thought the American dream was I can't wait to buy a house,
Yep.
and I did. I rented for years out of college, and so yeah, your story really resonates with me.
No,
Um,
and here's the thing, Manuel. It's
please,
like, um, we want to buy a house, and don't get me wrong, my our home is a great asset on my balance sheet. Like it's great, but the reality is like that asset costs me money every year. You
yeah,
know, like that
yep,
asset costs money that, quite honestly, you can't get back. Like, and it costs you
hmm
money every year that you can't get back. So at the time that I'm living in that home, it's not really an asset that's providing capital for me. It's an asset
hmm
that long term can provide capital for me.
hmm
In the short term, it's more of a liability than it is an asset. You know,
hmm
yes, it's an asset on the balance sheet, but if this thing costs me money every month, it's more of a liability than it is an asset in the current state that I'm using it in.
hmm yeah, the maintenance expense that comes in every month for maintaining the property absolutely can add up to a significant amount of money.
Mhm.
Can we pivot to the impact of some of the coaches in your life?
1000%. They've been
So
incredible.
yeah, so obviously, like I'm thinking about Coach Izzo and Coach Kerr, who I grew up watching when he played for the Bulls, being from Chicago. So shout out to Coach Kerr, just incredible. Love what they did for the city of Chicago at that time and what, just the legacy that they built because of that run. Um, but I really, really love the comment that you made about how coaches are typically one of two things. They're either a confidence giver or a confidence taker.
Mhm.
Put Coach Izzo and Coach Kerr into the which one?
Well, both of those guys are winners, and I've been
Yeah.
fortunate enough to be surrounded by winners throughout my career, which I don't think is a coincidence that I'm a winner. Coach Izzo, anything short of winning is absolutely not accepted, and then you need to win a certain way also are still not accepted.
Yeah.
And so having that foundation to build up on was incredible. But the interesting thing is I am one of the guys that's lucky enough to go back to elementary school where I had great coaching, where I had great teaching,
Mm,
and throughout my life where I had great teaching. But Coach Izzo, I think one of the things that I love about Coach Izzo is like he will tell you something. He will tell you something that can possibly tear you down a little bit. And we all need that because the last thing that I really want someone else doing that I know isn't on my side is being able to do something, say something that can tear me down,
mm,
right? And
yes.
Coach Izzo, by the time you get away from him, and when I say away from him, I mean into the season. As the year goes on, by the time you step away from that guy, you're so ready to take on everything else that's going to come your way because he's already taking you through the gauntlet. You know,
I love it.
he's already shocked you with what's to come ahead and then started to build your confidence back up, right? Like he's already prepared you for those moments. And
Mhm.
so with Coach Izzo, he's one of those guys, and then also he's going to teach you how to work, right? Like I think so many people think confidence just comes from your mental or it comes from within. Confidence comes from the work that you put in. And you must be trained by someone or taught by someone that has put the work in and that knows the work that it takes
Yeah.
to put in. Because if someone tries to teach you anything, build your confidence up with anything, and they don't remind you of the work that needs to go into it and to possibly build that confidence, they're leading you astray and just telling you what you want to hear. And so I've
Mhm.
been fortunate enough to have a Coach Izzo who's not going to tell me what I want to hear. It's funny you asked this question just before I left the arena earlier today. I don't know. Coach Kerr may be about to pass some win thing, some win total or something. I don't know. Um, but one of our PR guys, he pulled out this picture of me and Coach Kerr, and there's champagne. All of us, we got on the goggles, we got champagne bottles in our hand. It's from when we won one of the championships. And he's like, Draymond, can you sign this and sign whatever you want to say? We're going to give this to Coach Kerr when he passed that record or something.
Okay.
Because I
Yeah.
didn't go into what record it is.
Yeah.
But what I signed on the paper, what I signed on the picture is I said, winners win. And I am absolutely thankful for
Wow.
everything that you've taught me about winning. When I tell you the things that this guy has taught me about winning, like, no surprise he's won 9 championships. Because the thing that he, the things that he, the little small, minute things that people forget to look at, people forget to pay attention to when it comes to winning, he's taught me to look at every single one of those things. Every single one. I can dissect something crazy. And that's how you get advantages. That's how you gain the advantages in order to complete the win that you're going after. And
Yeah.
so I've been extremely lucky to have incredible coaches. I am someone I've been in the NBA now for 13 years. I've
13.
had 2 coaches. It's unheard
Yeah.
of, right, in
Yes.
this league. And so I
Yeah.
am incredibly fortunate. Mark Jackson was a confidence builder. Like, I am incredibly
Yeah.
fortunate of the coaches that I've had, the way they instill confidence in you, the way they instill that belief. And then also, like I said, more importantly, that understanding of knowing how to work, what it looks like to work, what it looks like to put that work in to become a winner.
What do you what would you say might be a common thread between the two of them, if there is one? Outside of their obsession with winning and the attention to every single detail, because obviously, I've been blessed to
Mhm.
go to a lot of Michigan State games in my 8 years in Michigan, and to interact with Coach Izzo enough that I know that I'm like, oh man, I mean, this is excellence, like at the level of dominating everything. Like, it's
Mhm.
just every single thing matters, and it's been incredible to watch him up close.
I think um, one of the qualities that they both have that they study. Uh,
Hmm.
they are they are junkies when it comes to the game of basketball. Like, they really watch the game. Coach Kirk come in every day talking, man, did y'all see X, Y, and Z happen on League Pass last night? Y'all see this game on League Pass last night? Like, the one thing I think about both of them is they are basketball junkies. Like, they
Yeah.
eat, sleep, breathe basketball, and so they're always prepared. They're always overly prepared. And they always know the right thing to do, but they always know the right thing to do in the right moment because they've studied this stuff so much. And when you've prepared yourself for something and then it flashes in front of your eyes, you're like, oh, of course, because I remember this thing happening when this, and the adjustment was to go here, and it crushed that thing, right? Like, they always know the
Mhm.
right thing, the right way to turn because of how much they study the game. And I think that's one of the qualities that I've tried to take away from both of them is just studying the game. Because if you can study and you know what's coming and you know the things to look out for, it's like a boxer, right? Like,
Yeah.
if a guy throws a right hook and I roll with the hook, if I roll this way off the right hook, I'm receiving that punch better than if he throws the right hook and I just
That's
stand there like this, right? Like, I got to roll with the right
absolutely.
hook, and but I only can really pick up on that is if I've studied this fighter and I can see some tendencies. And those guys, they're always dialed in on those things, and I think it's impressive. It allows their team to have an advantage.
So I love where you're at right now, and is there a way to now take this to out of the locker room and into the business world? And I just think about, like, this laundry list of businesses that you've either started, invested in, or are like a majority partner in. And I think if anybody's really curious about the list, they can Google it, but I'm just going to throw out a couple brands if that's okay with you. I'm thinking about like the Smile Direct Club, Lobo 1707 Tequila, Blink Fitness, Uninterrupted, Lark, Snack Pass, Rumble Boxing, Performance Inspired Nutrition, Major League Pickleball. I was like chuckling that in the same month, October of 24, you decide, hey, I'm gonna bring BD on as my co-host, my permanent co-host of the podcast. But in that same month, you decide, and I'm gonna start talking about football now.
Yeah.
It's just like, dude, huh? Same month. And hey, by the way, folks, I don't know if you know, but like in the United States of America, like that's during the NBA basketball season. So he's just
Absolutely.
launching things like bottle rockets out of nowhere. But with this like obsession and energy and enthusiasm that you have that's so freaking contagious, the attentions and the details, how do you keep up with all the details when you're playing basketball?
I have a great team, number one, to try to keep everything organized. So I
Man,
know what thing I have next. I know what thing is coming the next day. But I'll tell you, Manuel, the reason I'm able to keep up with all these things is because I love doing. Like
yeah,
I only try to get involved in things that I love because I want to be able to add
yes,
value in any way that I can. And it's hard to add value to things if you don't love it. Because if you start pitching me something and you don't love it, like a part of my job is to
yeah,
read people. Like
yeah,
I have to be able to read
yeah,
what mood is Steph Curry is in today. Okay, he's in this mood. All right, this may affect him this way. I need to try to help fill in here,
yes,
right? Like to fill this void. You know, I'm using Steph as an example. That's the first name to come to mind. I think, like I said, I use Steph Curry as the example. Well, in business, it's the same thing, right? Like you have a team, right? Everyone has a role. Sometimes, more often than not, there's usually a star player, right? And so having an incredible team to keep all these things going and then getting myself involved with things that I love to do. Like I absolutely love football. Like
yeah.
I watch football on Monday, Thursday, on Saturday, on Sunday, as much football as I can. I absolutely love the sport of football. I love watching it.
You've been a
I
good
think
tight end. You've been a good tight end.
right? Like I love that. I love basketball. So I try to get involved with things. I picked up pickleball maybe 6, 7 years ago. Absolutely loved it, right? Like, and
Yeah,
so I try to get involved with things that I love that I think I can have an impact on. That things that'll keep my interest that I want to go to work because ultimately in becoming who I became in basketball, the one thing that I learned to do is I learned how to work. Like you can't make it this far without working. And so in saying that, in order and to make it to the absolute top level of a
mhm,
thing, which I've done in basketball, I know the work that it took for me. I know the journey that it took. I know the amount of days I woke up like, oh my God, like this, it's just not happening for me. I don't know how it's going to happen for me. Like I know the I know the path
yeah,
to greatness is not a linear one. I understand that. And so I'm able to go on these different journeys in these different areas and different avenues and understand that when it all goes wrong, when it all hits the fan, I knew that was coming because I knew the path to where I'm trying to go was never going to be straight because I've made it to the top of something before.
yeah,
And so it's taught me how to embrace these different paths and along these different journeys because I know if I want to make it to the end, it's going to look like this. It's no different because it's
yeah,
basketball, whatever it is that I want to do. If I want to make it to the end, it's going to look more like a drastic stock market day than it
mhm,
is a constant growth like you see in Apple over the course of 10 years. And they have their dips too, but
yes,
you can hopefully get my point.
100%. And so what would you say is the simplest, most common, uh, example or indicator of, "Hey, this is a bad deal"? Because 'Cause you've made a ton of great deals, but are there examples or is there something specific that comes to mind that you say, "Man, if I had just seen that, I would have known it was a bad deal and I wouldn't have done it."
Um, for sure. Um,
What's the most common one?
fitness space. Like now, tough break because it coincided with opening with COVID, right?
Yes.
Where you couldn't get into a gym for 2 years
Mhm.
before government started lifting and allowing people to really attend gyms and allowing them to get back to full capacity, right? And
Mhm.
so I think. What I took away from that experience was just things that you think are recession proof probably aren't.
Mm,
Like, you always try to look at these things and you're like, man, that thing is recession proof, or this thing is
mhm,
recession proof. Like, I want to
mhm,
go into that thing because it's recession proof.
mhm.
But the reality is like there's still unforeseen things. Like none of us could foresee a global pandemic coming
Oh,
that's going to shut the world down, that's going to stop everybody from moving. Oh, and by the way, you cannot go to the gym and work out. Like,
mhm.
I don't think any one of us seen that coming. And so when you look at that and you go into these deals and you're like, ah man, this thing is recession proof. What does that mean?
Yes,
Like, how do you know so? Like,
yes.
you're essentially telling me you are aware of every problem that can come about in the world to tell me that that thing is recession proof. That's not really a real thing to me. And so I think when you start to hear tag words and stuff like that, let the antenna go up a little bit
Yeah,
because nothing's recession proof. Like
yeah, it's
that's
like
just not a real thing. Like
yeah, it's like unless
there's
unless
something that can impact whatever it is that you've been told is recession proof.
yeah, I'm still trying to get in on, like, Charmin's toilet paper empire and or cemeteries because I think those 2 might be recession proof, but you're absolutely right. There's so many other things that are not, and yet they are many times marketed and promoted to people with investable dollars and wealth, as
Mhm.
if like, "Hey, this is a no-brainer." One
Yes.
thing I've noticed, Draymond, is that I've also, like, raised my antenna on when people bring you an idea, and I always ask like right out of the gate, how much are you invested into it?
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
it's like I want to know. Like I'm not interested in following my own money. I want to follow your money if you're that certain about it. You know?
Absolutely. 1000%. I think that's a big one, right? Like if you got no skin in the game, but you only want to use my money. Ah,
Yeah.
tough one.
And I know we're coming up on time. Let's just wrap up on one quick topic for one quick minute. Goal setting. I
Mhm.
look in my time in Michigan. I've been in Saginaw 100 times. And it reminds me a lot of Northwest Indiana and the South Side of Chicago. And so I just have a deep appreciation for areas where good, hardworking Americans are trying to raise their children the right way, pursuing what you and I have agreed is the American dream, right?
Absolutely.
You man, you've had some insane monster like almost like Simon Sinek infinite game thinking goals. Talk about how you go about goal setting, and is there a simple blueprint that you can share with young student athletes and young men and women in the league?
I think number one is just what it is that what it is that you want, right? Like what
Mhm.
is it that you're trying to get out of whatever situation that you're in, and has to be your goals. But I think very important, it's equally as important as like not being afraid to reach for the stars on your goals. Like so many times, I think people set these short sighted goals because they want to reach them and they don't want to fail.
Yeah.
And I disagree with that mindset. Like your mindset has to be like you got to go for it. Now, you have to be calculated and smart in that, right? Like we're gonna lessen the risk in doing that, but setting meaningful goals that aren't just easy to reach, I think is important. Now, what I do think is important is setting short-term goals and long-term goals, right? Like, and your
Mhm.
short-term goals can also be leading to your long-term goals. But a long-term goals sometimes require you to set those short-term goals so that you can check these boxes off on the way to that thing. Understanding that Rome was never built in a day. There's always going to be some recalculations, some misjudgments that you need to
Mhm.
understand and go back to the drawing board and refigure it out. And so I think setting long and short term goals are both equally as important. I have short term goals every year that I come into the NBA season. I have short term goals every year financially. And then we have our full forecast on the rest of my life. We have a full
Mhm.
forecast on what I'm trying to accomplish the rest of my career and then how I go about that year by year. And so I think setting short term and long term goals are both equally as important.
I love the blueprint. It's, hey, know exactly what you want, be fearless in the pursuit of it, and build a roadmap that has both short-term and long-term goals in it.
Absolutely. Like I think they're both equally as important.
You're the man. If you gave 30 seconds of parting advice to, again, young men and women in the league who are starting to think about what are the decisions or things I should be doing while I'm still in the locker room before I go out into the corporate world, what would that advice be, Draymond?
Meet as many people as you can.
Yes.
Uh, just meet as many people,
Yes.
uh, build up as much social capital as you can, because at the end of the day, that's going to go much further than any dollar can take you.
I love it, brother. This was a great conversation, man. It's a ton of gold. You poured it out for 40 minutes. We're going to put together and share a really great conversation with our listeners. Um, Man, it was a treat. I mean, from the minute that Benny Fowler introduced us, when I first got to Michigan, it was very kind of
Mhm.
you. I mean, you were kind to include me when you were in town, and to then get reconnected through Jeremy and Travis. I mean, it's been awesome. I meant what I said at the beginning. I've admired you from afar. I love the chess you've been playing while you're in the league. It's a roadmap for other young men and women to live their most incredible life. And so it's just really a special treat to learn about the clues that Draymond's successful life has created for others. Thanks so much for being with us today, Draymond.
No doubt, Manuel. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. And I hope a few of these words can help someone.
Thanks, brother.